Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to really get into the details of some compelling source material. Today, we're taking a close look at a really striking article. It offers a very specific take on a major political moment in Kenya. Our goal is to unpack the main arguments, the vivid story presented in this one piece. It's called Raila Betrayed the Nation the Day He Walked Away from the People Who Carried Him. It was published by Village Action Online, June 24, 2025, and this comes straight from the perspective of the Kenya Wantam Notam movement, or KWM. We're going to dig into their powerful claims about what they see as a real turning point.
Exactly. And as always, our job here is to synthesize this, provide some context around the, let's say, strong views in this source. It's about helping you, the listener, sort of navigate this specific interpretation, understand what the KWM is saying, but also how they build their case and, well, why they see things so intensely. We're exploring their perspective, not judging it.
Okay, so to really grasp the weight of this betrayal they talk about, we need to look at how the source sets up Raila Odinga before the handshake. The article kicks off by painting this, really vivid image of him beforehand. They frame him as the hero who became a stranger. How does the KWM article build that powerful emotional foundation?
It starts by detailing this really deep, almost physical connection between Raila and the Kenyan people. The KWM isn't just saying he was popular, they're building this whole origin story almost, describing him as someone who once walked with the people. And the language is incredibly evocative, like mud on his shoes, sweat on his back, even tear gas in his lungs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not just description. It's designed to place him physically right in the middle of the struggles of his supporters.
Yeah.
Their experience becomes his experience, sort of.
That imagery, mud on his shoes,
Yeah.
tear gas in his lungs, it's more than just description, isn't it? It sounds like it's forging this almost like mythical bond, implying he literally felt their suffering.
Absolutely. And the article says point blank, he raised his fist not for cameras, but for crowds that believed in him. That phrasing is really important. It aims to cement his image as, authentic, a grassroots guy driven by real belief, not political games.
Mm.
The KWM pushes it further, calling him more than a politician, actually a movement. That elevates him, right? Beyond just one person to someone who embodies the hopes and the struggles of, well, a whole lot of people.
Being seen as a movement, not just a politician.
Yep.
That carries immense weight, perceived weight. And the source doubles down on that, doesn't it?
It really does. The KWM article reinforces this by listing his past struggles, surviving jail, rigged elections, beatings, and tear gas. Really hitting that point about him standing with the oppressed. And this line is powerful. He wasn't made in boardrooms, but in the streets of Kisumu, Mathare, and Kibra. That grounds him, firmly with ordinary people, setting him apart from the elite.
So his power, according to them, wasn't from backroom deals or elite connections, but built by crowds, not committees. Strength from pain, not perks. It really hammers home this idea that his connection was forged in shared suffering. So how does setting this really high bar for loyalty set up the KWM's later argument?
Well, this whole foundational story is critical because it establishes just how deep the bond was supposed to be. The bond they'll later claim was broken. It raises the stakes incredibly high for any perceived change in direction. It makes any action that seems to contradict this image feel like a deep personal betrayal to the movement's followers. His very identity in this narrative is a product of the people's fight.
Okay, so this powerful story of the people's champion then takes a really sharp turn. The article introduces what it calls the shocking handshake that shattered millions. This seems to be the absolute core of the KWM's argument about betrayal. What does the article actually tell us about this shock? How sudden was it?
The article paints it as completely out of the blue. A total shockwave through his base. It hammers this point. No one expected it. Not his loyal followers, not the grieving mothers who buried sons in his name, not the students who were beaten in his protests. It gets specific. It even mentions boda riders who lost limbs and hawkers who starved on days Raila called for action. Using these specific groups really drives home the breadth of people who, in the KWM's view, made real painful sacrifices for him. It amps up that sense of shock and, frankly, personal insult.
Right, so it wasn't just political insiders caught off guard. This was felt personally, deeply, by people across society who had, according to the source, put their lives on the line. The KWM is really stressing the personal cost here.
Exactly. And then the article frames the moment itself really starkly. And yet there he was, sitting next to President William Ruto. And the KWM explicitly adds, this was with the same man whose government unleashed bullets on Gen Z in the streets. That's a direct, powerful accusation. It links the perceived betrayal directly to the suffering of the youth, framing it as hypocrisy.
That's a very charged claim, definitely designed to provoke a strong emotional response, linking him directly to the suffering of Gen Z. So how does the KWM article describe the act itself, the handshake moment?
Their description is totally uncompromising. It landed like a slap, a press conference, a smile, and a handshake. No resistance, no explanation, just quiet surrender. The emphasis is all on the suddenness, the lack of any warning, any consultation. The source insists this betrayal wasn't slow, it wasn't disguised. It was right there, public, instant, undeniable in their view.
That paints a picture of just an abrupt, deep wound, not some calculated political move, but something much more personal. You can almost feel the emotional impact the source wants you to feel, right? A real sense of affront.
Oh, absolutely. It aims to show a moment of profound disillusionment. It argues that this action completely contradicted the lighter's entire history, everything he supposedly stood for, and, crucially, the sacrifices his followers made. It positions the handshake as just throwing away that shared history and struggle.
So what does this perceived massive shift mean for Rayla's legacy then, according to this KWM article? It suggests this huge change from people's fighter to Statehouse guest. That's not just a status update, it's a whole rewriting of his place.
The source is absolutely clear on its interpretation. It flat out claims he didn't lose to the system, he joined it. That statement reframes everything. It suggests his past opposition wasn't a noble failure, but a position he deliberately abandoned. The article depicts him now sitting with those who crush protests and silence youth, essentially making him complicit, aligning him with the very forces he supposedly fought against.
That is a heavy accusation, implying he's now part of the problem his supporters were fighting. And the KWM article really zooms in on the reaction of the younger generation, Gen Z specifically. What does it say about them?
Yeah, they put a lot of emphasis on the youth reaction. The article claims Gen Z noticed, they deleted his photos, they stopped chanting his name, his rallies fell silent, his words no longer trend on social media. The KWM uses this to show a clean break. They suggest this generation just moved on. It signals a permanent split, a departure from his leadership. And that specific reaction, the social media stuff, it feels very contemporary, a digital form of political rejection.
That's a really interesting point about the generational shift, a new kind of political statement. Does the KWM article hint at why Gen Z might be particularly sensitive to this betrayal, maybe because of that earlier mention of governed force against them?
It definitely implies a link. Mentioning the bullets against Gen Z earlier, then showing their swift digital rejection, it suggests they have maybe zero tolerance for perceived hypocrisy, especially given their own recent experiences. The article goes on to argue the betrayal is bigger than Raila, that it's intensely personal. The source gives these examples of Kenyans sacrificing more than he did people who skipped work, skipped meals, put their lives on the line. They protected his name like it was their own. That really frames his perceived turn as a deep personal wound for those who'd invested so much.
It's not just about a leader's choice, it's about the huge personal cost paid by those who believed. The article then contrasts this with his past self, right?
It does, very sharply. The KWM article pits today's Raila against the Raila of 1997 or 2007, insisting those earlier versions would have rejected this handshake. They use this comparison to argue there's been a fundamental change in his character, that he chose comfort over courage and basically forgot where he was made. This view stresses it's not just politics, it's a profound personal letdown for so many.
Okay, so the article lays out the perceived betrayal, but then it seems to actively argue against any possible justifications. It's really emphatic about why Kenyans won't forget. What reasons does it shoot down?
Right, the KWM article dismisses ideas like strategy, legacy, or unity as legitimate reasons for the handshake. It basically calls them empty excuses. It quotes directly, "There's no strategy in surrender. There's no legacy in bowing to thieves. There's no unity with those who kill children in protests." This isn't just disagreement. It's a full-on moral rejection of any attempt to explain it away.
So they're not just disagreeing with the handshake itself, they're dismantling any potential defense, saying those defenses are morally wrong, even insulting given the sacrifices.
That's exactly it. And the source's wrap-up in this section is just as blunt. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. Raila made his choice. Now Kenyans will make theirs. That's a powerful move, rhetorically. It shifts the power, the future action, squarely onto the Kenyan people. It suggests their next political moves will be a direct response to this perceived betrayal. It's almost a call to action.
And that ties in so clearly with the broader philosophy you see hinted at in the KWM's own website header, that message. Noticed the current future president's cabinet, parliament, county leaders, skiza waken yes skiza ground, or be impeached, be kicked out by our votes even before one term ends. It really lays out their stance on accountability, doesn't it? No matter who's in charge.
Yeah, that header is fascinating because it provides the underpinning for the KWM's whole viewpoint. It positions the movement as this constant watchdog, emphasizing that leaders, present or future, absolutely must skis awaken yet listen to Kenyans and skis a ground, listen to the grassroots. That explicit threat of impeachment or being kicked out by our votes even before Helmtem ends really highlights their focus on using electoral and civic power for accountability. It gives you the context for why they see the handshake as such a catastrophic failure of leadership. And, they encourage engagement directly. If this resonates with you, visit www.onehamnotam.com, create an account, share your own ideas for changing your village, city, or the whole nation.
It certainly puts their indictment of the handshake into a larger frame. A direct, unwavering rejection, presented as part of an ongoing demand for vigilance and accountability from absolutely everyone in power.
It really defines their core message. Accountability first. Leaders have to stay true to the people's struggles or face the consequences democratically.
What's really striking now is how the piece looks forward. It paints this picture of Kenya's future, explicitly moving beyond this specific leader. It suggests a pretty bold new chapter. How does the KWM article imagine this future?
The source's vision is very clear and quite final about the past. It states, the streets have moved on, Gen Z has moved on, they are choosing new voices. This isn't just an observation, it's them declaring a major shift, generationally and socially, away from that older political story. The KWM flatly states that Raila Odinga's chapter is closed. That implies he's just not relevant to this movement's future anymore.
So, more than just rejection, it's like a declaration of independence from a past figurehead. The movement has outgrown him, in their view.
That's the feeling, yes. The article boldly claims the revolution will continue without him. That's a huge statement of self-reliance, of momentum carrying on regardless of one person. It insists the fight for change will go on no matter what past alliances existed or what betrayals are perceived. And the source stresses the youth don't need another messiah. They need accountability. They need dignity. They need leaders who won't trade their lives for handshakes. That lays out a very clear demand for a different kind of leadership based on integrity, commitment to the people.
That's a fundamental shift in what's expected, isn't it? Moving away from looking for one charismatic leader to demanding, ethical change, structural change, driven by the people.
And the KWM article ends with this incredibly strong statement, summing up their whole argument. He had the chance to seal his place as a national hero. Instead, he sealed his place in the hall of betrayal. Let him sit with the thieves. The streets have already chosen a new voice, and this voice doesn't need permission to rise. Wow. That's not just criticism. It's a defiant proclamation of a new, grassroots-led future.
Incredibly impactful. It sounds like a movement declaring total independence from someone once seen as central, asserting that the power, the future, is now genuinely with the people. It's a call for a new generation to forge its own path without relying on past figures.
It really hammers home the KWM's viewpoint that the leadership torch has been passed. Not through an election, perhaps, but through this perceived betrayal that has spurred a new, independent political energy, ready to write its own story.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the Kenya Wantam Notam movement's perspective, as laid out in their article, Raila Betrayed the Nation. We've walked through their powerful narrative of perceived betrayal and their call for a fundamentally new direction in Kenyan politics.
Yeah, looking closely at this KWM article really underscores how absolutely critical trust and perceived loyalty are in political movements. It shows how one single action, when interpreted as betrayal by a group, can completely flip the script on a long-standing leader's story. And crucially, how it can spark new kinds of activism, new voices rising up. It leaves you thinking about how these dynamics are constantly reshaping politics, really, everywhere. And again, if you find yourself wanting to engage with these ideas to be part of shaping that future they envision, the KWM encourages you to visit www.wantamnotam.com. You can create an account there, share your thoughts on changing your community, your city, the nation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the KWM's perspective. As always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep digging into sources that challenge you, and help you understand the world a bit better. Until next time, keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive.